Hola, ¿qué tal amigos del Mundo BSO? Estoy aquí con Mikael Carlsson, que es el productor musical del sello MovieScore Media, que lleva 5 años editando bandas sonoras con más de 500. Vamos a hablar con él de la edición de bandas sonoras, de la producción de conciertos, que es a lo que él se dedica. Hi Michael, how are you? Welcome to Mundo BSO.
Thank you very much. I'm good. I'm good. It's spring in Sweden, so it's getting more light every day. So things are going in the right direction.
You have MovieScore Media has 15 years of life and more than 500 scores realized in the market.
Yeah.
After 15 years, and you are still alive, and the MovieScore Media is still floating.
Yeah.
It's a miracle, or it's a logical consequence of a work well done.
Well, I think it's a bit a question of stamina, of course, to hang in there during the times, and to believe in what I do as the label and as the producer. Still believing in promoting primarily promoting the works of lesser known composers, European composers, Asian composers, and so forth, and finding a way to get their music heard in the world, besides the film that they composed for. Also, it's it's been like this for over 15 years. The music industry and the music market and the film industry, it has really changed a lot. And one of the things that amused me a little bit is that when I started out 15 years ago, if you remember, the first year was only digital. So the first a dozen releases or something like that, they were only digital. The only place you could buy them was iTunes, because that was basically the only place for digital music back then. It was a little bit of Amazon as well, I think, and that was too early. So I realized I had to start doing CDs, because that's what the collectors want. They want the physical,
yeah.
Yes, and they want to have a booklet, and they want to put it in their shelf, and they want to, make the discs shiny. It's something that you put a lot of care into your collection. I'm not that kind of person myself, though. And I always felt that for me, what's at the center of the whole process is the actual music. Whether it's the way you transport the music to your ears is less of importance to me than the music itself. But that's when that was in 2007, and I realized back then I had to do CDs, and that's where the label actually took off in terms of the financial side of it. Now, in 2021, we're actually back a little bit where I started, and now it makes sense to release music in digital format only, and with a little limited edition of CDs if there is a demand for that. So actually, if I started out, if this was the first year of the label, it would have made more sense to do what I did back in 2006 and believe in the digital, arena for music distribution. So it's a big difference now.
There is something that you have achieved and gained with your label, and it's peculiar because I think it's. I mean, usually the other soundtrack labels, they prestige themselves with the composers they released. I mean, if you release a score by John Williams or Danny Elfman or Jerry Goldsmith, obviously you get a big name on the market. But in the case of MovieScore Media, I have the impression that it's the contrary. I mean, the composers are those who are prestiged by MovieScore Media releasing the scores. I mean, it is not the composers who make the label, but the label who made the composer. In the case, wait. In the case of MovieScore Media, why? Obviously, you have released soundtracks by Doyle or Jarrett or David Shire, but also from composers really unknown in the world, and by the fact that they have been released through MovieScore Media, especially collectors have, oh, this composer must be interesting because MovieScore Media has released it. Mm-hmm. So I think that, and we can talk not only about Johann Solveig Beast, Panu Altayo, Scott Glasgow, Conrad Pope, and of course the Spanish composers. So how do you select what are you releasing and what you will not release?
Well, that's actually a purely musical question for me. Of course, in order to be able to make a label thriving in terms of business, of course you have to look at the commercial aspects of it too. But that has much to do with timing more than anything else. So if we release an album by a smaller composer, whatever you want to call them, I don't regard them as small, of course, but in relation to the giants you mentioned, the legendary composers you mentioned. If we, for instance, in the case of Panu Altayo, the Finnish composer, of course, he's gaining traction now in the film music world and among collectors and fans, even since 2009. I think we did the first album, or 2007, don't remember. Home of Dark Butterflies, and after it has been an ongoing relationship, which is also it's much more about the creative process that we have together. How we like to work with each other. The way he sends me all of his music, and I do an album cut, edit it, and he gets it back, and he likes what I did. He has a few. It's a creative thing that. That I am a composer as well, so I have an understanding of that creative flow, I think. And sometimes I click very well with composers. Sometimes it's the other way around, of course, because it's a matter of taste sometimes as well. But that's how these relationships are built. And in terms of business, of course, I look at the when is a film going to be released. So with Pano, we're releasing an album next week, for instance. No, now on Friday, which is a Finnish TV series. Of course, that album is released now when the series is airing in Finland, of course. But Finland is very small. But the timing is still of essence. And what the other thing I have to mention there is that it has changed now, because the way music is distributed and promoted in this era is that playlists and placements and discovery of new talent is something that is not only an A&R thing that we label guys are doing. In these days, the platforms like Spotify and Apple Music, they will also be interested in discovering and presenting new talent and good music. So if you compare it to 2006, when I released a great jazz score by Pete Calandra, the first album I did, if that was now, one of those great jazz tunes that he wrote for that super small film could have found its way into one of iTunes' major jazz playlists, and that would have made a huge difference in terms of the business. So now it actually makes sense. That's kind of a lottery if you get a placement in a playlist. That you never know about that. You have to be lucky. But anyway, there's a completely different scenario now. When in 2006, all I had to rely on was the willingness of the fans to discover something new, and just taking my word for it. Now everyone can, go online and stream the music and make their own judgment and see what it is. And there's, a completely different set of opportunities and rules now in this business.
Do you depend too much on the soundtrack collectors? I mean, for the general public, the general buyers.
No, I don't. Well, I do, and I don't, because the market is also. It has so many different layers now. You have my main thing is the digital distribution, and there, of course, visibility of the film itself or the series itself is important. So if you have someone looking at the Merlin TV series, streaming it on some platform, and they love the music, they will go to Spotify to see if the music is there. That's the way it works now. But then we have the collectors, both on the CD and vinyl side. That has to be, in terms of the music itself, it has to be geared toward the collectors. So if I release a score in digital format that is not of interest for the collectors, it might have another arena.
Yeah.
And when I release, for instance, there's going to be a great release I'm working on now, which is going to be a new entry in the Discovery collection. I'm not going to mention the title just yet, but it's anniversary title. It's never been released before. It's by a British composer, and it's big and orchestral. And it's for a film from the 90s. And that's not, no one's going to listen to that. Well, of course, a few, but that's not going to be a big hit on Spotify. But that one is going to be, hopefully, a big hit among collectors who will buy the CD and the vinyl because, it has a sort of a cult following. So you can work in different areas.
But you depend on sellings. I mean,
yes.
Many people just listen without paying in Spotify, or we'll talk later about downloadings, the illegal downloadings of the music.
If anyone listens to the music on Spotify, it's gonna result in revenues, even if it's the free Spotify. Because if you go on Spotify to stream an obscure album that I put out, that's, even if it's the free version, that's going to generate revenues, even if it's very small. But there's still a difference between what we had for a while, where the online listening was, it had a large stamp on it that it was piracy and that it was no money to the authors. But that's not really the case now. It's a bit worse with YouTube, actually, because they are really the tariff that they have and the benchmark that they have for payouts and blah blah blah. They are very, very low, or very, very high rather. The benchmarks. So and the royalty levels are very, very low on YouTube. But it's actually, I have to say, of course, you are absolutely right. Some of the albums I put out, they make peanuts, absolutely peanuts. But altogether, and it is a bit of a lottery. You never know. Some albums I released 10 years ago or 7 years ago, all of a sudden they get all of a sudden, the films are on a streaming platform somewhere. I don't even know where, and you can see a rise in royalties for that release that you could never have expected 7 years ago. So, in terms of surviving business-wise, it's very much about volume. That I have a big catalog. If I only had the latest 50 releases, I had to do a lot of other stuff to survive, but I have a catalog of 500 releases. Yeah. Not all of them are still, live. Some of them, the licenses are no longer valid. But for the most part, that stuff is still, available. and you can go online and listen to it. And every time you do that, it's going to generate money for the label and the composers.
I know, but many the composers and you complain about the low incomes that are coming from Spotify or YouTube or something. They are protesting in the social media. The composers that.
Yeah, let me tell you why. There is a difference also between what's called the writers or the publisher royalties. That's related to the composition and the actual writing of the score. Then you have the type of royalties that is associated with the recording, and that level of royalties is not that bad. It's the publishing royalties that are very, very low. So if you have your music that you've written, it's performed as they say on Spotify or streamed then on Spotify per listen. It's ridiculously low, and it's still low as well in terms of the master license that you get paid for, but it's much higher at least. And a share of those royalties generally also go to the composers of the work, which is something which is rarely mentioned. So, but when I complain mostly about YouTube. But of course, everyone would want the royalties to be higher because they are low. I mean, if you buy a CD for $15, how many times will you listen to it? Let's say that you listen to it 100 times. That's quite a lot, isn't it? So you won't get $15 from 100 streams on Spotify. So there is no equivalent there, really. But on the other hand, you pay for a lot of other stuff when you buy the CD. You pay for the booklet, the printing, the plastic, the transport. You know, you pay for a lot of different things. And when you have the music online, it's the music, a little piece of artwork, and the promotion and administration and the cost. That's where the cost really is. And mastering, and you know, there are costs involved, but in terms of the whole budget, of course, it's much more. It's possible to release music on a lower budget on Spotify than taking the chance to do a CD.
Yeah, you have worked in association with other labels like Quartet Records or. So you do the digital and they do the physical. Who wins, the physical or the digital?
That's very different. It's different it's very different from title to title. I don't have the numbers yet, but I could imagine that a title like Marple, for instance, Agatha Christie release that we did, will do very well on digital because it's such a wide phenomenon. Agatha Christie has such a large fan base, which is much bigger than the soundtrack fan base. So that might be more, commercially successful on the digital side. But like the one I mentioned that we're going to do with Quartet now, the Discovery Collection entry of the 90s score. That's going to be. I'm confident that's going to be bigger on the physical side. So it it depends on what the film is or the title or the composer.
How the illegal downloading affects the industry, the record industry, in your case?
I don't know. Every title that I put out ends up on one of these scam sites, and I'm of course upset with them. But if I would have to deal with them, I would need to hire some guy to do that full time. It's so much, and I don't know how much it affects. I really can't say. I think that it has an effect. On the other hand, a lot of I think that it's more of the nerdy types that do that stuff, because if you and the audience is still quite small. So if you look at the people who for instance, if you have Spotify, you don't have a reason to go there and download that. Why would you do that? It's on Spotify and you already paid for it. Which is why I don't spend too much time on that. But of course, it's for one thing, it's ethically wrong. It's just wrong.
Absolutely, but the real truth that the truth doesn't understand of ethics is true. A crime is a truth, so you don't argue about the ethics of the truth. The truth is that the illegal downloading of the film music scores has make the people collecting soundtracks an amazingly grown amazingly. I mean, there is.
Do you think it's the illegal downloading that?
Yeah, of course. Because why? Because many people. Well, yes, you have the music on Spotify and you can listen there, but there are people that I want to have this music. I want to have it at home, at my disposal, and for whatever. So you have 1 and 10 and 1,000 and 2,000, and I am a soundtrack collector. I haven't paid a single euro, a single penny on it, but I am a collector. I have 2,000 film music scores. This is my big. So these people, younger people, usually, they have grown in a mentality that they understand they have to pay for the food. They don't get into the supermarket and rob the food, but they have grown that they can get the music for free.
Yes, I know. Yeah.
So this is impossible. This is very difficult to change the mentality. No, if you want the physical or you want to have it at home, you have to pay a little, because I mean the composers are saints, but are humans, some of them. So they have to eat. They have to eat. So I mean, yes, I illegal downloading has helped to grow the community of collectors. This is not ethical, but this
I agree with you on everything you said, and I really don't know how to handle it, and that's why I don't do it, I guess.
Yeah.
Because it's really impossible to deal with, and there is, of course, what you say. I mean, you put it forward as a truth that the fan base has grown because of that. I haven't seen any numbers on that. I don't know if that's the truth. It sounds more like a theory to me. But if that is the case, of course, there's a little upside to it. But on the other hand, if the fan base for film music grows on the expense of film music, what's the point? I mean, if you have the fan base is growing by the 1,000, but no one is paying for it. So what's the use of those 1,000? Except for the nice notion that they love film music, that's all fine. But you know. Well, it's a kind of a philosophical twist to all of this, and I don't really know what to do with it. I think most of my colleagues, I don't think anyone really have the budget or the patience to deal with this, and I think it's just because if you spend 6 months trying to deal with them, they're going to pop up in a new shape after a couple of weeks anyway. So what hurts me is that we haven't been able to educate our younger generations to understand that if you continue to do this, and if everyone continues to do this, at the end of the day, it's going to be no music. There's going to be nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. But well, yes, it is the truth. It is one of the saddest truth, because it happens also with the movies.
Yes,
With the movies. So,
of course, yeah.
But the fact is that if a person grows by eating bread for free, they will never want to pay to eat bread. So it's difficult. Mikael, Spanish soundtracks. You are a benefactor of Spanish film music. You have released very Spanish composers like Alfonso Conde, Arnau Bataller, De la Riva, Palomares, Pastor, Timón, Cardelús, Jara Husit. So, what's your opinion on Spanish film music nowadays?
When I visited Spain for the first time, well, it wasn't for the first time, but the Spanish festival, I think that was in 2004 at Son Cinemad. I met a few, not a lot of them. It was not like composers festival. But I remember discussing this, that I thought that Spanish film music had such a high standard overall, and that I was met with a lot of disbelief. And then when I came down to Úbeda for the first time a couple of years later, it was the same. I think when I met Zacarias for the first time, that he couldn't believe what I said. And I had reached out to him via emails some years earlier to ask about his music, and he couldn't believe who this idiot from Sweden, why is he bothering me with these questions about my music? Who cares? There is people who care about this stuff. And then, of course, as you know, the rest is history, that we worked on albums together and even scores together, where my choir recorded his music, and we've done a lot of stuff, and he's a very good friend. And
Automata is a masterpiece.
Yeah, it's fantastic. The score it's so cleverly done, and it's beautiful and all that, and unusual. But I have to say that overall, to answer your question, I still see that the overall quality is very, very high. It's very high on a couple of different levels. First of all, musical, because that's what I really care about, is that the level of composition is usually very, very high. The level of production is also very high. It seems to be, if you compare to many other countries, there seems to be, Spanish composers always complain about the budgets. Of course, everyone does, as I complain about YouTube and royalties. But there seems to be a budget for live musicians quite often, at least the music that reaches my ears. And it's great. The writing is great, and you have such, there seems to be a high level of education and diversity. And I mean, I've been working primarily with Zaca and Marc Timon, and of course Alfonso Conde back then, and a little bit with Fernando Vlasquez, and a bunch of others. And all of these, the level is so high.
It is.
It's never bland or anything. It's just it's such an elegant way of writing. The other thing is that there seems to be, I don't know if this is, you know this much better than I do, but there seems to, compared to where I come from, there seems to be much more of an understanding of what music can do in film. Here in my country, it's changed a little bit. Of course, Let the Right One In is a big example of the opposite, but in general, directors and filmmakers and producers, they are afraid of music. They don't know what to do with it. If you have a film that takes place in Greece, they understand that they should have some Greek instruments in there, maybe to color it, but they don't know what to do it in terms of narrative. They don't know when to have a montage and let the music do its job and connect the dots for the viewer. It's so rare, I think. So, but I see that happen in Spain all the time. that it's so skillfully done and intelligent. And on top of that, it's usually, as I love the romantic and, you know, dark romantic orchestrations and all of that stuff. So, yeah, it's on a very high level.
You know in which field I do battle, which is my battle. I always say, no, the film music is not a CD. Film music is not on Spotify. Film music is in the movie, in the film. When I listen, I know. I have listened every one of your 500 releases, and I always thought, well, I need to see this movie. Sometimes it's impossible, but I need to see what's doing this music in the movie. Not only aesthetically or even dramatically, but on the narrative side of the filmmaking side of the music. So to me, the drama of the film music realization CDs, the drama is that many people think that there is where film music ends. This is film music, and I always say that you have to go to the picture, to the movie, to the film, to see what the composers has built through music in the film to the narrative. So I think both sides, the CD side, or the digital side, and the film side are compatible. They are important, both important. But the most important thing is, of course, what happens in the film. Don't you think that?
Let me. I knew that you were gonna ask me this question. So it's the only question I prepared when I was out having a walk. And of course, you're right. Of course, you are absolutely 100% right. But the way I want to turn it around is to say, which is something that I really can't stand, is when you have, of course, I know that this is out of the hands of the authors of the music very often. So a composer doesn't really have a say in whether or not the music is going to be put on an album and released as a soundtrack album. But I really feel strongly and passionately that if you decide to put the music out on an album, you can't say to the listener, if the listener is not happy with the music, you can't say, well, you have to see the film to understand what I'm trying to do. Well, if that is the case, why did you put out an album? That's really illogical to me. So when I do, this is why I'm really careful about the way the albums are produced, and I always want to have a hand in that with the composer. And usually I do the album production for the composer to approve or have feedback on. But I always try, and I know that a lot of fans are against this because they want a lot of the fan base want the music exactly the way it is in the film, because they want to experience the film, you know, taking away the layers of the actual film, just to, you know, and I can understand that. But I feel that the album, and some people think this is pretentious, but I feel that the album should have a life on its own, and that we have music from a film. They wrote 2 hours of music for it. Let's see what we can do with this to make it into a new, a new work, and that will still, of course, be related to the film, but work on its own. Doesn't mean that the music would be completely rearranged. Sometimes it works the way it is because it's so, you know, well done, or the narrative of the film is done in a way that it actually lends itself very well to an arc on the album. It's the same when you do a concert suite of music from a film. It's actually exactly the same. You would never perform a complete film score in concert without the images. You put together the best of the score and makes it into a coherent, you know, nice piece of music.
let me a small discrepancy with you in this point, in this specific point. I do totally agree with you with your defense of the CD or the I mean the soundtrack edition. All right, I do agree with that. My complaint with the concerts and the damage that I think that concerts make in the film music understanding. People when go to the concert, not the collectors, not the people that knows what is film music, but general people. They go to a concert and they expect to listen Star Wars. You don't put in a concert Freud by Jerry Goldsmith or Planet of the Apes, but so people, general people, not the film music fans, general people think that film music is that beautiful music.
Mm-hmm.
That is the music that they with the head can do.
Yeah.
They can dance with it. They can feel emotions with that. So this is good film music. This is the music we want. We pay to listen in a concert. So when you said that there is music that is not so beautiful, that is ugly, this dark, there is toxic music, the Conjuring, the Joseph Bichara Conjuring score. You don't go to a concert to listen to music, but it's wonderful. The damage of on film music that are making, in my opinion, concerts are that film music. They are selling the film music as is the music that you will like to listen.
Yeah, I agree with you to a certain extent. Of course, I have produced many concerts with Planet of the Apes or for instance, such a grotesque piece of music as Evil Dead by Rock Baños, which is one of the most exhilarating concert experiences I've ever had. The ones who were there agree. It was amazing. The piece of music was amazing, but that was fireworks, avant-garde fireworks going on for 10 minutes. And people were like, wow. So that's evidence. Of course, that was an audience that is into film music, but not all of them. Not all of them. A lot of the people in these concerts in Cordoba were of course, regular Cordoba people going there curious to see what film music might be sounding like. So I think that when it comes to programming concerts, it's those of us who are coming from the film music field who do that, we have a responsibility to always try to put some balance into the programming. I know that this is something that my friends in Germany, who I work a little bit with, the European Film Philharmonic, and myself through Soundtracks Live, when I do that, and even others, I know that we all want to, we understand that the orchestras would want the candy to the audience, but you know this as well as I do, that 1.5 hours of candy is going to be too much for your stomach. So you need to balance that, and there's always room to carve out space. I remember, for instance, in Gothenburg, here in my hometown, that is, when I think it's 17 years ago, I think. That was also in 2004. They wanted to the Gothenburg Symphony wanted to do general, film music concert. Even the poster had a box of popcorns, and it would be a general thing. And they agreed, of course, because I had put together most of the program for that. And of course, we had all the regulars. We had I think there were Star Wars and Indiana Jones and Jurassic Park, and we had Silverado, but we also had a few things that were unexpected. And what we had was the world premiere of the suite from The Matrix. And that was the piece, and that's complex modernist music. It's not atonal that much, but it's not the romantic Star Wars thing. That was by far the most loved piece of them all in that concert, which proved, I think, to the producers of the concert in the concert hall that, okay, maybe we need to think a little bit out of the box, and that there is music, as you say, that needs to be put there, that doesn't banalize. We don't want film music to be something that's banal. We want to show that it's multifaceted music of great quality in different shapes, and it comes in all kinds of colors. We're on the same page in this discussion.
No, and we are in the same page in any discussion. In any discussion. Yeah, because you Mikael Carlsson, that we know for many years, you defend the composer as composer, and that's good because they are composers, most of them. They are composers, and I defend them as filmmakers. They are filmmakers, most of them. Filmmakers. I mean, this is the balance. They make music and they make cinema. Both sides are complementary. Both sides are complementary. But on the other side, it's mandatory to understand what the composer has, how the composer has achieved the result with the music. And that maybe in a picture, in a film with the sound effects and so on, you don't appreciate that much as you can do it through the CD. No?
I agree. Yeah.
That's the point. That's the point. So we are in the same page. But Mikael, thank you very much for this conversation for MundoBSO.
It was my pleasure.